in high proper motion stars. So please go.
Hi, so I'm Zoe. Can you hear me okay with the microphone? Okay, I didn't know if I was too far away. But yeah, I'm a member of the Galactic Center group. I am a third-year grad student, and today I'll be talking about measuring extinction with high proper motion stars. So to begin, as many of you know, the Galactic Center is a highly extinguished region, so with up to 30 magnitudes of extinction in the V band. So only in the infrared can we peer through the dust and start to resolve the stars at the center of our galaxy. And so this was done starting around 1995, as many of you know, and it revealed this population of high proper motion stars orbiting around something. What this something is a supermassive black hole, which is awesome. And so over the past decades, data in 2 microns K prime has been collected as part of this orbit's work. But as the years went on, in the past decade, there's other interesting science that can be done at the Galactic Center with adaptive optics in the near infrared. And so on the bluer side of K, we have H band, which is around 1.6 microns. So folks have studied Sagittarius A stars infrared variability. So Hadrian's talk yesterday talked about that kind of stuff with the accretion. Redward of K, we have L prime, so 3.8 microns. And with L prime, we can resolve the dust and dusty structures around the supermassive black hole. And some of these objects, G objects, are tidally interacting with the black hole. And so pretty much over the past decade, we have amassed a huge collection of multi-wavelength infrared photometry of the Galactic Center. And so we have 18 nights between like 2010 and 2022 in H and K and L colors taken on NERC2. And with this data, we can study the photometry and color variations of Galactic Center stars. And why is this cool? Well, it's really cool because with these multi-wavelength measurements, in conjunction with these really fast, high proper motion stars, you can actually resolve and probe extinction at the Galactic Center. So sort of the picture we have is we have a fast-moving star at the Galactic Center, and it moves behind a dust cloud. And what happens when it moves behind the dust cloud? If we look at a color magnitude diagram where color is on the x-axis, magnitude is on the y-axis, what you see is over time, it's getting dimmer and redder, which is an extinction effect. And so when we look at our photometric variability sample, our multi-wavelength sample, we actually see a ton of this. So 30% of our sample exhibits long-term dimming and reddening. And by long-term, I mean on the order of like a decade. So very, very long-term dimming. And there's a beautiful example here, which is a very bright star, Iris 16cc. So it dims by around a magnitude, getting redder over time. And what we can do with this is we can measure the slope in the color magnitude diagram, which then directly translates to an extinction ratio. And so when we do this to our entire sample, we are likely probing dust that is localized to the Galactic Center. And we know this because, for one, looking at the color of the entire sample, what we notice is that here I have plotted the color versus the K prime magnitude, and our extinction variable sources are in black. What you'll notice is that they tend to be much redder than the non-variables, which are in gray. So likely they are behind something, likely at or behind the Galactic Center and not in the foreground. And the second reasoning that it's likely dust at the Galactic Center is that the angular distances that the motion of these stars are probing is very small. So here, what I have plotted is the angular distance traveled for our sample. And on average, our sample is moving around 50 milliarcseconds over our observational baseline. So we're probing dust that is very angularly small, which is likely much closer to the source itself rather than the foreground. So yeah, we're probing dust at the GC. And why is this interesting? Well, we can answer multiple questions and we can really understand the dusty environment that is local to the supermassive black hole. And so the scale and densities that we're probing compared to earlier studies, they're on sub-arc second scales. So here on the right is an extinction map from a paper in 2010. And here is the map's resolution. It's around 1 arc second. Our work drops the resolution or increases the resolution by a factor of 20. So our resolution is this tiny dot right there. So we have a much smaller resolution for extinction. And what I'm going to focus on in the rest of the talk is looking at the dust properties local to the galactic center. And so how we can think about this, so this is the slope distribution of all of our variable sources, and this is how photometrically variable they are. So more photometrically variable sources will live over here. And so sources with slopes less than 90 degrees will essentially be a reddening effect. And what you'll notice, these black points, they're clustered around a characteristic slope. And so to identify this characteristic extinction slope, what we do is we throw this distribution of points into a Gaussian mixture model that takes into account the slope errors. And this Gaussian mixture model will tell us the populations, their weights, and also the means of the Gaussians. And so that is what is plotted on the right here. So this is the modeling of the populations. And what we find is that the extinction group has a mean slope around 56 plus or minus 2 degrees. And so putting this into the context of previous work on the extinction law towards the galactic center, this is actually very consistent. So just taking a law from Fritz 2011, they find an extinction law, which is this dotted line right here, of around 53 degrees. So at H and K, our results are very consistent. But when we take this same population and look at how it's varying at L prime and K, so the KL colors, we see something interesting. So again, more photometrically variable things are over here, and here's the slope in the color magnitude diagram. So what we find is that this population has a mean slope of 73 degrees. And when we compare this to what other folks have derived about extinction towards the galactic center at these wavelengths, is that it's inconsistent to 3 sigma with these measurements, which is an interesting question. And so I've been talking about slopes the whole time, but not a lot of people think about extinction as a slope. So when we put this in the context of relative extinction, so AH over AK or AL over AK, we can visualize the difference. So right here is wavelength, this is relative extinction. So what you'll notice is that H, our measurement is very consistent, but at L, our measurement predicts that there is too much extinction still. But what should be noted is that these other works are using a different method of measuring extinction. So these works are not actually measuring the local extinction. What they're measuring is the reddening that has been integrated along the entire line of sight. So if this is us observing a star moving at the galactic center, what other folks are observing is this A, which is most of the extinction, plus a delta A. But instead, because we're measuring how the photometry changes and the color changes relative to the star itself, we're actually probing the delta A. So the extinction localized to the galactic center. And what this result could imply, and how we argue it in the paper, is that there are different grains at the galactic center than along the foreground. And so what I have plotted here is the same plot as before. So wavelength versus the relative extinction, and 2 grain models that are assuming silicate graphite grains with different total to relative extinction value. So RVs, the ratio of total to relative extinction. And so a high RV dust population will tend to be dense and have mostly large grains, while on the other hand, a lower RV population will be more diffuse and have smaller grains. And so this black dashed curve, which suggests a larger population compared to, a larger grain population compared to this gray curve, fits our data better. So what this could suggest is that there's large grains at the galactic center. And this may not really be that surprising. And so there's sort of two pathways these grains could emerge from. One, they could be freshly formed, they could be new, and they could be primarily formed in the winds of Wolf-Rayet binaries, or the huge population of late tide stars at the galactic center. On the other hand, they could also be grown at the galactic center. So we might be seeing evidence of grain growth, actually. So the ambient UV field, which is very high at the galactic center because of the large population of O and other young stars, creates a very bad environment for small grains, and it'll preferentially destroy them. So the larger ones maybe just lived and were able to grow over time. Yeah, so I'll leave my summary slide up, but if you want to check out the paper, it's in preprint, and here's the QR code.